Hello everyone, welcome to Talk HR UK. I'm Simon Geere, and when I'm not enjoying wonderful podcasts with HR leaders, I'm helping HR directors, MDs and CEOs source the best HR talent in the UK. Today I'm joined by Sarah Scannella. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Simon.
Great to have you. I'm great, thanks. Thanks for giving up your time.
No, not at all.
I've known Sarah, we've known each other, it's a long time. I think it's a good 10 years at least. I met Sarah when you were working with BDO.
Yep.
The accountancy organisation.
Yeah.
But Sarah's had a great HR career with some fantastic brands. I mean, the brands are superb, actually. You've got HP, Ericsson, BDO, Unum, L3, and then more recently, more Barlow. Some of these have been permanent, some of these have been interim contracts. And Sarah's been delivering some, fantastic HR change, transformation, and straightforward BAU leadership across these businesses. But there is change.
Absolutely.
Sarah, we were talking, I guess, over the last couple of years, as you were thinking of setting up your own coaching organisation and spending a lot of time getting qualified, and that's now become a reality. So today's topic really is all around the benefits and the concepts of coaching, whilst focusing on how we help individuals and organisations. So I guess my first question, a great place to start, Sarah, is why did you switch from being an HR director into more of a professional coach?
Yeah, that's it. And it's a great question, actually. And and there's a bit of a long story to it. So if you don't mind bearing with me, I'll just take you through it, because it wasn't necessarily an overnight switch. And I think if I go back to when I was a child, I was never one of those children that had this really clear plan of what I wanted to do when I was older. I'd always get asked by adults and parents, what do you want to be when you're older? And I was never really sure. And I think I was always very creative as well as a child, and had lots of sort of artistic interests. But I guess as I got older, one of the things that was really clear to me was that, and I guess this came from sort of the mindset and from parents and grandparents, was, you needed to get a good job. You needed to, get some stability and get a good job. And I think in those days, those sort of more creative careers just either weren't around. So graphic designers in the 80s, we didn't have them in the same way. Sort of interior design as well, those sorts of things. It just wasn't necessarily accessible for someone, like me from we lived on a housing estate. I went to a comprehensive school. Those careers just didn't necessarily present themselves.
Sure.
So I very much grew up in terms of, this thing around, need to get a good job, need that stability. And I think for, my parents' generation and my grandparents before them, work wasn't necessarily something that gave you a sense of fulfillment or purpose. It was actually to pay the bills, keep the roof over your head, and
survival.
Put food on the table. So I guess I grew up with that kind of mindset to a certain extent, and had amazing support from parents, but from the creative side of it, probably didn't follow that route. So, I've had a really good career. I probably fell into HR, if I'm honest, because enjoy working with people, I enjoy the relationships. It wasn't necessarily a conscious decision, I guess. I just sort of worked my way into it via sort of recruitment for a bit as well.
Right. Okay.
And I've had a really successful career, really enjoyable career. But I think probably about 6-7 years ago, I started to really notice, and it wasn't a sort of a sudden shift, but I started to notice that, I was just finding it more and more tiring, more and more exhausting. I'd get home at the end of each day and just felt like the energy had sort of drained a little bit. And I think, although I was really good at it, I started to feel quite guilty about, what's wrong with me? Is there something wrong that, I've got this great career, I'm well respected in my profession, I'm earning well, but actually I'm not feeling very fulfilled. There'd be lots of people that would kind of jump at that chance. And I started to think about what were the things that really kind of gave me energy and really brought me to life. And it was about the relationships. It was about spending time with those senior leaders, being that trusted advisor, that wise counsel, helping them to navigate through difficult situations or situations of change. So that kind of led me into doing the coaching qualifications initially. But I guess through a combination of a few things, probably some of my own fears about, can I really make this transition? And as well as the sort of the harsh reality of, gosh, I need to go and earn some money still, I kind of spent a few years there really straddling both careers. So I decided to go down the interim route because I thought, actually, that's a good way of, I can earn some money, but I can also have then some time to do some of the other coaching work that I was doing as well. And I did that for a few years. But again, what I realised was that I was then using that time in between to almost build up that energy to keep me going when I was back in those sort of HR roles. And I think, last year I was doing a sort of an interim role, great organisation, great people. We were going through significant change. I was sort of re-establishing an HR function. There was an impending merger. Then COVID hit at the same time.
Busy.
On the side, at the same time on the side of homeschooling, and also I had some other coaching clients as well that I was doing some sort of leadership development with. So it was just a chaotic year, and I think I got to the point where I just thought, what am I doing? It's just, how is this how I kind of wanted to live my life? Did a lot of thinking, a lot of soul searching, and realised that the common thread between all of it was about helping people through change, actually, and helping them to navigate it. And whilst the change necessary, might happen outside of us, it's actually the internal process of understanding what that change means for us, which is the area that I found myself being really interested in. And from a coaching perspective, that's where you spend a lot of your time really helping that person navigate what's going on, inside of them and their thoughts and their beliefs and their mindset around things. So, a very long-winded answer, but that was my transition into coaching.
It's really interesting to hear. And as you mentioned, you had this natural propensity with the, as you say, almost the sometimes uncomfortable companion to the leadership team, but that advice, and absolutely. That was what was giving you career fulfillment. And there are technical areas of HR where you are stuck in a room tapping away, and that's not for everyone, so I completely understand. It's a brave move, and I'm glad it's working well for you. So absolutely. So obviously, most people are probably thinking, as an experienced HR professional, hopefully there's a good foundation to move across to coaching. Some of the skills will be, are innate, they're there. But what skills do you think are required for a successful coach? How did you make the transition, I suppose?
Yeah, and I think in my experience, some of the best coaches that I've certainly worked with, and therefore what the coach I aspire to be, what they're really, really great at is holding that safe space for their clients. So when you're often working one-to-one with people and you've built up that trust and rapport, they'll actually talk to you about things that perhaps they've never actually said out loud, or they've never, haven't necessarily even told some of their family or friends or partners. So you're in a really sort of privileged space. And so I guess, from a skills perspective, the ability to be able to really build that trust, that rapport, and then actually hold that container for people to start to explore some of their thoughts and just how they see the world actually is really, really key. And I think another big thing around skills is the best coaches I've worked with really understand how to listen. And I think we all think we can listen really well, but actually it takes it to a much, another level, to be honest, in terms of really being able to tune in and hold that space and almost walk with your clients and be in their world and try and understand things from their world. And that's not about having a sort of a soft or a cozy conversation, but I think it's about respecting where they are in their own transition and then being with them as they go through that sort of exploration and understanding and trying to make sense of it. Sometimes people are revealing things that are really deep rooted about their beliefs and their values and what, and kind of the experiences that they've had. So being able to kind of hold that space, really listen, really be in rapport is absolutely key. And I think the last thing as well is, as I said, it's not just that cozy conversation. So being able to really be, in tune, understand what's going on, and then ask some really insightful questions that actually help your client move forward is really, really powerful, actually. And that's really where you tend to then start to get those aha moments with your client, where there's, something starts to click with them. So
it sounds really interesting. I mean, it's actually quite a big responsibility, isn't it? Because you are effectively helping them, change and shape their future behaviours or the performance of an organisation in some cases. Yep. So, it's not for the faint-hearted, I imagine.
No, absolutely. And I think the thing is that one of the biggest things for coaches is to be able to you've got to get out of the way of yourself as the coach, because actually it's really important to create that space. It's all about your client. It's about them, how they see the world. It's not about you. So you have to, as a coach, you learn to really leave some of your stuff, behind. And that's where kind of coaching supervision is really, really important, because you want to make sure that you're not necessarily reacting to something that your client says based on your own experiences as well, because then you're starting to bring your view into it rather than holding it for that client. It's a very privileged role, actually.
Yeah, and that impartiality, I guess, is key. There's a lot to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So conceptually, then, coaching, I think it seems to be, happily climbing higher and higher up the agenda, as HR, does in general at the moment with everything that's going on across 2020, 2021. How do you think coaching, has become more relevant and will become more useful in this post-pandemic era?
Yeah, I mean, you think about where we are, and I think even before COVID, a lot of the sort of business commentators were talking about the fact that we were operating in this fourth industrial revolution, this kind of VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous. So even before this latest sort of pandemic, we were operating in a place where, the world was rapidly changing. And so, just to consider that for a minute, when you think about it in terms of the world of work as well, our demographics are changing rapidly. We're seeing sort of 5 generations now in the workplace. You think about the way that work is evolving, more portfolio careers, freelancers. I think that I saw a quote that said the average person at the moment will spend around 90,000 hours in their lifetime at work. So that's an awful lot of time to be at work and to be able to navigate that, I guess, and to lead a life where you feel fulfilled and purposeful, and you're doing something that's aligned to what's important to you. And I think then you add on, the other changes that we're starting to experience. We know more about ourselves and our brains with the advances in neuroscience and psychology than ever before. So we've got this growing awareness around, what makes us tick and our brains and how we see the world. We're going through quite significant, almost evolutionary change. We've got this kind of growing other pandemic around mental health and well-being, some of the lifestyle diseases that we're now starting to see. There's other wider social change that we've seen over the last year in terms of sort of Black Lives Matter. The political landscape has been incredibly changeable, and regardless of your sort of political persuasion, some of the things that have played out on that political stage, you would never have seen 5, 6, even 10 years ago. It just wouldn't have been the way that people operated. So we're in this world where literally everything is shifting, everything around us is rapidly changing, and trying to kind of make sense of that and trying to understand how you navigate yourself through all of that when everything else around you is, all that sense of certainty has gone, things are really unstable. And so I think this is where coaching really comes into its own, because it is focused very much on the individual or teams. And it's really getting to understand how they see the world. So how do they see the change that's happening, and what does it mean for them, and what do they need to be able to navigate through it and get out the other side? And I think that applies regardless of what change is happening. So even, I think about my own route over the last year or so, shifting from the HR world into coaching, even though that was a change that I had chosen for myself and I really wanted to do it, it didn't stop the fact that I went through all of that change process of having to let go of some stuff that, the stability, the assurances of an income, of those sort of relationships, and then shift into this new world of coaching, where at times you're working on your own. It's all down to you and your own sort of ability and performance. So even though that was a choice that I'd made to affect that change, you still find yourself, going through that transition process and thinking about how you're going to navigate it. So for me, I think never before, has there been a time where human connection and human understanding actually of each other has ever been so important. And actually, I think coaching can play a massive part in helping people to come out the other side, actually.
No, you make a really good point. And when you play back this last 12 months and the impact on people, as you say, even when we're through the worst of the physical health side of this, and I know so many people have had so many bad experiences, but there are long-term issues that coaching can definitely play a key role in, as you say, for people of all levels, all walks of life. So
and I think when you strip everything back, it is about people. It doesn't matter what business you're in, whether you're selling a product or whether you're selling a service. At the end of the day, your business is built on those people, and they will all be going through their own experiences of the pandemic, the world changing around them. Some people will feel that they're navigating it better. Some people will think they're okay and then hit a brick wall. And actually, that's where, good coaching and kind of building coaching capability as well within organisations can really, really help. And I think it's important to say, this is not about counselling, because the point of coaching is that it's very, very future focused. It's very much around getting people to where they want to be. It's more kind of outcomes and goals focused. So it's not about going over all ground, but it's about what can we learn from what we've got, what's got us here, and actually what do we need to evolve and change to get us to where we want to get to in a sort of a more positive frame, I guess.
Okay, so most of our audience will be HR professionals. That's my network, and I
think it's still mine a little bit. I'm still putting my HR hat on slightly.
No, once you put the HR hat on, it never comes off.
Exactly.
One of those things with you for life. But I mean, specifically for these guys, for the viewers and listeners, I suppose, what areas of HR do you think coaching can help specifically? Because it obviously plugs straight into a lot of what we do as HR professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, my background is in business partnering. And I think that's a huge area, because I think, one of the things I always think about when I reflect back on my HR career is that, a lot of people in a business that you're in will often expect you to be the expert and to have the answers, and almost want to hand over the problem that they have around a people issue for you to fix. And I think, in those days where, as HR people, we're trying to build our credibility up, actually being the expert and being the problem solver is how we kind of earn our stripes, I guess, a little bit. Whereas I think being able to have a slightly different tone of conversation with your clients through having more of a coaching conversation changes the dynamic of the relationship, and it kind of it changes the shift of emphasis a little bit around who's responsible for stuff. So I've certainly, as I was doing my sort of coaching sort of qualifications and building up that expertise, I started to use that coaching a lot just in day-to-day, just around the types of conversations I was having with leaders. So rather than me giving them the answer to fix it all of the time, I was actually, digging much deeper to say, okay, so how do you think you should navigate it? Because I think you get more ownership from people if they've actually found the answers themselves. So I think certainly in that kind of business partnering space, that is a particular area actually. And we're starting to see a bit of an evolution of organisations that I think coaching used to be a service that they bought in. Then it was almost like a skill to give leaders, whereas now we're starting to see a shift with a lot of organisations that are actually really starting to build their culture around coaching and those types of conversations. So it's a growing profession, actually.
Excellent. Okay. So people always want to hear the practical experiences, I suppose, and examples of success. So clearly you've been doing this a little while now, and I can remember talking to you in your busiest times, actually, when I had, brief time for a quick chat, and you were between clients and one of your many day jobs.
Yeah.
But so some of the examples, I guess, of the work you've carried out so far that you're able to share, some of the benefits, either to individuals or perhaps to organisations. Is there anything you can share with us to give us an indication of how it works? Yeah,
absolutely. So I think, one of the clients that I work with, I mean, this will probably stay with me actually with my career. So this was a partner in a professional services firm. And they were very successful, actually. They were, a senior partner, had a great career, but they'd taken on a new role, some new responsibilities. And I was working with them really to help them go through that transition, to think about what they needed to do for that new role. And so we started to kind of build a bit of a vision around what success would look like and the things that they would need to think about. And actually, as we got into our coaching kind of engagement, and we started to really build trust and rapport, and they started to kind of reveal a bit more about some of their innermost thoughts. What we realised was that the biggest thing that kind of stood in their way was their own self-talk, and they had some beliefs around the fact that they were quite an introverted person, and they had some beliefs around the fact that that meant that actually they were quite boring and actually not that interesting at networking things. And part of this new role that they were taking on was to kind of build new relationships and network much broader. And so actually, as we went through the process and really unlocked that and unlocked some of that belief and helped to kind of, think about it a bit differently and look for the evidence and actually work through that limiting belief with some different techniques, actually, it was almost like a complete release for them. And I can remember they were preparing to go into this really big event and this sort of big meeting that was following up. And, I worked with them to get them into the right mindset, to put that limiting belief to one side. And just the energy, actually, that they had as a result. I remember speaking to them afterwards, and they just said, I can't believe I've been carrying this stuff around with me for so long. And that's actually been getting in my way for so long, actually, but I've managed to let go of it now. And they just went on to be really, really successful in that particular area that they thought was something that they really struggled with. And then more recently, I've been working with a client who's actually started a new role. So they've transitioned into a completely new organisation, which is always hard. Everyone's remote working, they're at home. So some of those things that you take for granted around how you build relationships, haven't been there. They haven't been able to meet a lot of their peers and their teams sort of face to face. But they found the transition really, really difficult and actually have probably misjudged some of the situations that they were in. And a couple of things sort of landed badly. So I was engaged from their organisation to give this new leader some support. And so what we started to do was just to kind of unpick some of that. And there was some cultural stuff there as well that had come from a very different organisation and hadn't necessarily picked up on the nuances of how this new organisation worked and how they might need to kind of navigate it and show up. There was some stuff around just trying to get clarity around their role. But then the other part was really around helping them to build some flexibility around their style and their approach. So that they could kind of, they've got more in their toolkit, I guess, for when they're in different situations. So again, in that scenario, the clients come out with actually settled really well now in their role, has been able to kind of write maybe some of the things that had gone wrong to begin with, so rebuilt some bridges and some relationships, and is now starting to work with it, with a lot more flexibility around their style in terms of how they're engaging with other people. So.
They're really good examples, aren't they? I mean, in that one, I mean, it's great to see an organisation bear with someone and believe they've got the right hire and appreciate those concerns and invest a little more time and obviously, money in getting them across the bridge, so to speak. And you obviously played a really key role in that. That's really great to see, because so many companies quit at that point.
Yeah, and that's the thing, this leader had so much experience and skills to bring into this organisation. They spent money on going through that recruitment process. It was a senior hire, so they've already invested quite a bit. And actually, all it took was a little bit of one-to-one support. I think we had 8 sessions, and actually it just helped them to kind of just, and it comes back to that sort of old adage of, what got you here won't get you there. And so, they'd sort of come in with this mindset of, well, I'll just do what I did before because that made me really successful. But they perhaps hadn't picked up on those subtleties of how, the culture of the organisation was different, how it worked was different, the political landscape was quite different. And so learning to navigate that as well. And then when you're remote from that as well, some of those subtleties you can't pick up on. So, I absolutely. I mean, you think about the investment they've already made. This person's got huge potential. It's just, needs a bit of help making that transition, to be honest. So
it's funny when you put it like that. I mean, that sounds like a genuine, for people like yourself and all the coaches out there, that's a genuine business opportunity, because an awful lot more people of all levels, but particularly at senior strategic levels, will be joining businesses where they don't meet anyone for weeks, months. And it isn't straightforward, and no one knows. Both sides of the fence don't know how to deal with it. So coaching can really, can definitely benefit. And the first example you gave, I just thought the fact that you must be so rewarding to change someone's life to an extent and their outlook is wonderful.
Absolutely. I mean, the first person we spoke about, this stuff had been weighing them down for years, actually, and almost just, they'd had a successful career, but they almost felt that like they were limiting themselves, like they were almost just never quite going far enough or pushing themselves to where they, their full potential, because that inner narrative, that voice was almost just holding them back. Because it was around fear, and they were worried about how they were going to be perceived and whether they had those sort of skills and credentials to be that, person that can network and build relationships. And actually, when we unpicked it, I think they'd also built up this idea of, to be able to network really well, you had to be this big character. And this client was somebody who was more introverted, but as a result was more thoughtful. They put real effort and energy into how they built relationships. They felt much more sort of authentic and genuine. So whilst they weren't necessarily this big kind of rah-rah character, what they brought into new relationships was really, really valuable, actually. And people wanted to work with them because of that, actually. So when we repositioned it for them, it as I say, it was like, just completely unlocked something in them, which, as a coach, that's amazing. That's what, not everyone has that aha moment. It's not all like that. But when it happens, it's really rewarding and really special, actually.
It must be. It sounds it. I mean, and you can see. I can see the excitement. And the passion comes through, which is great. So, well, the word of the moment, and I think the word forever now is going to be change. In all walks of life. Professionally, personally, economically, it's all about navigating change. So, how can coaching help people navigate through change in the new world?
Yeah. I think I read a quote recently, which for me was brilliant and really brought this to life. And it's something like, it said something along the lines of, we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. And I think that's really, really key, because whilst we are all experiencing these changes that, we've talked about around us, we will all experience it so differently based on, our life experiences, what's happened so far. Our beliefs, our values, our mindset, all of these things come into play. So it's a very, very personal thing, navigating change. What one person finds easy, will be the thing that the next person, it stops them in their tracks. So for me, I think this is where coaching can really be at its best, actually, is helping people to get through that and helping people to understand, what do I need for me to feel okay about this situation or to make this change, and actually come out to the other side and start to kind of see that there are some new beginnings and some new opportunities. And I think that, the more we can spend understanding that on an individual level, the quicker I think people will be able to kind of move forward and start to focus on the future. It's a very, very personal thing.
You're right. And as you say, coaching, like so many aspects of everything, from people management, from leadership, there's no one size fits all. We're people at the end of the day. Everyone has a different, even if we were all in the same circumstances, which clearly we're not, the outlook and the way of coping is just completely different, isn't it? So absolutely, you've kind of got to be prepared for all manner of unexpected moments, I suspect. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's the point, isn't it? For organisations, it's about them really building up that, it's about human very at the end of the day. So for a leader really to understand their team as individuals as well as a team, of course there's absolute, very much there's opportunity and momentum that they can gain as a team, but that team is made up of individuals, and understanding then how you bring the best out of that person as an individual is what ultimately will make your team really, really successful. And I think, one of the things I always found hard as an HR person was that, so much, I guess, of a bit of old school HR was that there were systems and processes in place that kind of were, very generic, but actually didn't always fit at an individual level. And you have that constant tension. And of course, you need consistency and you need process and you need some structure. But sometimes I felt like, God, we've really forgotten who the individuals are that actually make this whole thing work. And that's not, again, as I say, it's not about being soft. Actually, I think that's about being really commercial. It's about really understanding how do you really harness the potential in your team and in your organisation. It's not by trying to make them fit into a particular mould necessarily, but it's about really tuning in to what brings them to life and when are they at their best, and actually getting them to do more of that, to be honest. And I think, again, that's where coaching can really help unlock that for people. A lot of people will have stuff that is just holding them back because maybe they don't quite fit, or maybe they're not quite sure, or they maybe don't have the best relationship with their boss, or whatever it is. But actually being able to get them to navigate that and get past that means that they can then show up and, and be at their best.
And this is very on point at the moment, I suppose, in that there's so much talk around, obviously, inclusion and particularly around culture change. And
absolutely,
a lot of businesses have been criticised for, the classic, who do we know in our network who could fill Bob's job or whatever it is, and more of the same comes in, and organisations are having to look at everything from their hiring processes through to how do we worry perhaps less about culture fit and more about culture growth and development. And
absolutely,
coaching is going to be so key to both the incoming people but the existing people in an organisation from the old world, so to speak.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, the point is, I think if you almost look at your workforce and your teams in a very generic way, you're just not, and you're not allowing them to kind of be at their best, or you're not bringing that out of them, then actually you've just got blind spots. You've got stuff that you're just going to miss. And that's the whole point around diversity as well, is that, if you end up, as you say, recruiting the same type of people to a particular mold, then you're going to miss huge opportunities and completely different perspectives that actually grow and enhance and help your business to kind of flourish. I'm a bit of an advocate for coaching, to be honest, as you could tell.
Definitely. So from an organisational level, because this is what always interests me, I've worked personally for great big blue chips, and then I've worked for the last 18 years for quite a small, sort of almost family feel business.
Yeah.
Again, no one size fits all. How do organisations need to adapt to kind of encourage a coaching culture and get things moving in this space?
Yeah, I think in a way, coaching historically has probably had a bit of a bad reputation, in that it's often been seen as, someone's got a problem that they need to fix, and we need to hire a coach to go away and fix that person. And so it's almost been treated as a sort of a remedial intervention, a senior person that's got some behaviours that are not terribly helpful. Well, we need to get a coach to coach that out of them. And so I think, historically there probably has been scenarios where that's been true. So I think some of it is about getting people to really understand what coaching is. And actually it is about, helping that individual really connect with who they are and how they want to show up, and actually helping them to move stuff out of their way to realise their potential. So there are a few organisations that are really starting to understand that. So Grant Thornton internationally have been doing huge work around developing coaching capability within their organisation. Barclays are doing the same, that they've got an internal coaching team now that is growing. But I think there is some stuff that really underpins this, and the whole point of coaching is that you're exploring some fairly deep stuff often with people, and then actually as a result of that they might want to be able to go out and try some stuff a bit differently and learn and reflect and gain the insights from it. So for me, I think a really big fundamental around how do you create a coaching culture is that you've got to have almost that sense of psychological safety. So employees need to be able to feel that they can be themselves, they can try some stuff out, they might get it wrong, but that's okay, they can learn from it and move forward. So underpinning it, I think, has to be that trust and that sense of safety, that we can experiment and we can learn. And that's almost like that fail fast, let's move forward and take the insights and kind of, develop from there. So for me, that's a really big thing that kind of underpins it. People are not going to, reveal their innermost thoughts or their concerns if they don't trust you. And that applies very much in an organisation as it does in a coaching relationship. You're not going to get the best of that person if they are guarded and unsure of what the outcome might be if they say what they really feel or what they really think. So I think certainly rebadging coaching a little bit in terms of its value, and then that piece around psychological safety, around trust.
And it's interesting you mentioned a couple of businesses there, but if, as you say, if some of the bigger players are bringing in permanent internal coaching functions, that's, as you say, that's great for the industry, and it sort of trailblazes a pathway, doesn't it, for people to take this more seriously and see it as the essential part of leadership, really, and people management that it is. So it's good for the industry.
And I mean, you think, how many times I think back to my own career and I think, gosh, how many times did I get really stuck with a situation where I just thought, I have no idea how to navigate that. And, fortunately, I had, people that I could use in my network that I could kind of sound things up, bounce things off of and sound them out and test the water a bit. But, for some people, they don't necessarily always have that, or actually it's not appropriate to do that. So, you just think if you could build that capability within an organisation, that managers and leaders and the HR team have that ability to have that coaching conversation, and you feel able to do that because there's that trust there, and that sense of safety, and therefore you can be yourself and actually explore some of these things that are holding you back without fear that it's going to impact your future progression or whatever. How powerful is that? It just completely changes the dynamic, and it makes it very much about people again.
Oh, completely. And I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. I always look back. I think you remember people that were great coaches, even if you weren't really aware of what they were doing and the concept at the time.
Absolutely.
My first boss in retail, I'll name him because it's good to reward people, isn't it? But a guy called Steve West, who I worked for a number of years in Portsmouth at HMV, and he'd obviously been through the leadership development, and he never told me how to do anything. He always forced me into figuring out how to do it myself, and he's still my linchpin when I look back at when I became interested in people management. It relates back to how he treated me and allowed me to grow and make mistakes, but it wasn't just directive, because that only works in some circumstances.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. One of the things I do a few collaborations as well. So because again, it can be a lonely place sometimes, just being a coach on a one-to-one basis. So I do collaborations with other sort of peers and psychologists. And one of the programs that we're building and developing at the moment with my peer Julian Roberts is about how to build coaching capability for HR people so that they can have a really different conversation with their clients. So that's something I'm really excited about, because I think, gosh, after 25 years of being in an HR career, for me, it's as I said to you earlier, I still have a bit of my HR hat on. And so, to be able to kind of give something back and maybe try and inspire people to think a bit differently about their relationship. And what we're thinking is that it'll be, it won't just be sort of us teaching, it'll also be an opportunity for them to kind of explore, okay, I've got this situation at work. So it's that trusted space again. I've got this situation with this client or this, this person I work with, I want to try and think about how I could navigate through that. And then, we practice with some coaching skills. So, but I think you're right. You always remember those people that you've been able to kind of turn to and have that type of conversation with. So the more we can build that capability within organisations, then, we've got a good chance at improving the quality of the relationships that we have.
Oh, definitely. Hey, look, well, it sounds like your business is going in the right direction, and you've got some great some great clients already, but clearly a clear vision of where you want to take it. And it makes perfect sense to, as you say, HR so well, so hopefully you can provide a great service to that industry. But for people that have listened or watched this today who are perhaps interested, I'm assuming they can reach out to you on LinkedIn as Sarah Scannella, or alternatively Interstellar Coaching. Have you got a website as such, or
I'm building that. So this is me on my learning curve, my change curve. So I'm at the moment building a new website for it. So I'm learning all about SEO and optimization and things like that. So so LinkedIn or sarah.scannella@interstellarcoaching.co.uk is my email address. So
that's great. Well, good luck with the website. I will. I look forward to seeing that.
I know.
Always
Me
interested.
too.
But obviously, hey, thank you so much for giving up your time today. I've really enjoyed it, actually. And I feel like I could keep talking, to be honest. But hopefully our listeners will take something away from this. And again, really thanks for your time. But hopefully maybe another one down the line when you've got some,
I'd love to. It's been an absolute pleasure, Simon. I mean, as you say, we've known each other for a really, really long time. So it's been great to be able to have this conversation, actually. So thank you for inviting me.
Not at all. Thanks for coming. But hey, enjoy the weekend, and
and you.
Speak to you soon. Cheers, Sarah.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.